My name is Sam, I'm 34, and I live in Austin, Texas. On paper, my life looks about as ordinary as you can get: stable tech job, a little starter house in the suburbs, married to Laura for just over 6 years. I'm the type who packs leftovers for lunch, listens to true crime podcasts on my morning commute, and still calls my mom every Sunday. Up until a few months ago, I would have said I was happy. Maybe not movie-ending happy, but at least the kind of content you're supposed to feel after years of putting in the work. I thought I knew my wife better than anyone. But looking back, I wonder if I was just convincing myself everything was fine. If maybe I ignored things that should have been obvious. It started on a regular Thursday in mid-September. Laura had told me all week that she'd have to stay late at work. Her company, some mid-sized real estate firm that was growing way too fast, was celebrating the closing of a massive deal. I knew she was stressed. She'd been talking about this corporate dinner nonstop. She even joked that it was going to be the party of the year and that I'd probably be bored out of my mind if I tagged along. The weird thing is, I never used to doubt her about work stuff. Laura's always been ambitious, but lately her hours kept creeping later, and her stories about office politics started to sound more like high school drama than actual business. There was this one name that kept coming up: her new boss, Mr. Stevens. She'd say things like, "He's such a character, always making everyone laugh," or "He's intense, but he pushes the team to do their best." I chalked it up to her trying to impress her new manager, maybe angle for a promotion. I figured it was normal. That night, though, I got off work a little early. I'd been thinking about surprising Laura, maybe taking her for dessert at that late-night place she loves. She was always complaining that we didn't do enough spontaneous things anymore. So I grabbed my keys, got in the car, and drove over to her office. The new building was all glass and chrome, modern, a little cold. The kind of place that wants to feel fancy, but just ends up feeling impersonal. I remember sitting in the parking lot, rehearsing how I'd play it off like I just happened to be nearby. At 9:06 p.m., Laura finally walked out the front doors. She looked amazing, honestly, hair done, a new blue dress I hadn't seen before, heels she usually saved for something special. For a second, I just watched, thinking how lucky I was. Then I saw she wasn't alone. Her boss, Mr. Stevens, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, that overconfident swagger you can spot a mile away, was right beside her. He wasn't acting like a typical boss. He had his arm around Laura's waist, hand resting just a little too comfortably on her hip, fingers flexing as they walked. Laura was smiling at him, tilting her head up, whispering something that made him laugh. The way she looked at him, it just didn't look professional. She wasn't acting like she was with a boss. It was like they were at a party, not a work dinner. They stood under the streetlight, close enough that I wondered if they even remembered anyone else could see them. I froze. For a second, I honestly thought maybe I was seeing things or misreading it. But no, that was my wife, looking happier than I'd seen her in weeks, pressed up against another man. My heart started hammering in my chest, a sick feeling crawling up my throat. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, that maybe I just didn't understand the office culture, but my brain kept replaying the image. They lingered outside, Stephen still with his arm wrapped around her waist, Laura not pulling away. She said something else, softer this time, and I saw Stephen's grin. That's when Laura finally looked up and spotted me, standing by my car. I'll never forget the look on her face, the quick flicker of panic before she forced a smile. She immediately stepped away from Stevens, her posture stiff like she'd been caught sneaking out as a teenager. Stevens just stood there, adjusting his tie, not looking the least bit embarrassed. Laura hurried over, heels clacking on the pavement, clutching her purse tight. "Sam? What are you doing here?" she said, voice high and tight, her eyes darting between me and Stevens. I tried to keep my voice steady, tried to act normal. "I thought I'd pick you up. Surprise you, maybe grab some ice cream on the way home." She forced a laugh, but it sounded wrong, too rehearsed. "Wow, that's sweet, but you didn't have to come all this way. I was just about to call an Uber." She glanced over her shoulder at Stevens, who was now on his phone, giving us privacy, but clearly listening. I tried to act casual, but I had to ask. "So, looks like you two had a good time?" She bristled immediately. "Sam, come on. Don't be weird. We just closed a huge deal." Everyone was hugging, joking around. That's literally all it was. She **************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************� He hugs everyone. It's awkward, but it's just his thing. Her words tumbled out fast, almost rehearsed. She started rambling about the project, how hard everyone had worked, how Stevens was just being friendly after a long day. "Honestly, you're reading way too much into it. It's nothing. I'm just tired." Then she pivoted, talking about her promotion, about how this was going to be huge for us and how proud I should be of her team. I tried to listen, but all I could focus on was the way she kept glancing back at Stevens. Like she was checking to see if he could hear us or if she was afraid of what I might say next. She started talking faster, piling on details about her day, about funny things her coworkers did, about how she really needed a shower and some sleep. She made a joke about Stevens, saying, "You know he hugs everyone like that. It's honestly ridiculous." She was trying to laugh it off, but there was no real humor in her voice. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to tell myself I was being paranoid, that I was just tired after a long week. But the image of her with Stevens burned in my mind. The way she looked at him, the way she pulled away when she saw me, it just didn't feel right. I nodded, pretending to accept her answer, but inside I felt hollow. On the drive home, Laura talked the whole time. She told me about the new clients, the bonus she might get, even gossiped about coworkers I'd never met. I could hear the nerves in her voice, the way she'd start a story and then switch topics halfway through. I tried to ask her again about the dinner, about why she didn't mention Stevens would be there, but she brushed it off. "Sam, it's not a big deal. Seriously, you're making it weird." The rest of the night, she was distant. She barely touched her food, disappeared into the shower as soon as we got home, and when she finally came to bed, she was scrolling through her phone, replying to messages I couldn't see. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over. Her words echoed in my head, "You know how Stevens is. He hugs everyone." But I'd never seen her act like that with anyone else. That was the night I first realized something was wrong. I wish I could say I confronted her or that I trusted my gut. But I didn't. I convinced myself it was just stress, that I was being insecure. I told myself I was lucky to have a wife as driven as Laura, someone who was finally getting recognized for all her hard work. But deep down, something was broken. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. After that night in the parking lot, nothing felt the same. On the surface, Laura and I went through the same routines: work, dinner, sleep, the odd movie on Friday nights. But something inside me had shifted. I wish I could say I confronted her right away, demanded the truth, but that's not how real life works, at least not for me. I tried to believe her excuses. I tried to trust. But the doubts started eating at me, slow and silent, gnawing at the foundation of everything I thought we had. I started replaying the last few months in my head, like a detective going back over a crime scene, picking up clues I'd missed before. The more I thought about it, the more all the weird little moments came rushing back, each one making a little less sense than the last. For starters, Laura's phone, she'd always been the type to leave it lying around, screen up, never locked. But lately, it was glued to her hand, always face down. She started setting a password, which I'd never seen her do. She claimed it was because her company cracked down on security, with everyone working remotely part of the week. At the time, I bought it. Now, I wondered. There were other things, too. Sudden, urgent calls in the evenings, usually just after dinner, right when we'd usually settle in to watch a show together. Sometimes she'd take them in the kitchen, sometimes she'd step out onto the back porch, her voice low and careful. When I'd ask who it was, she'd say, "Work, sorry," or sometimes, "Just my mom, you know how she worries." But more and more, it didn't feel like work or family. She was laughing in a way that wasn't for me. Then there were the training trips. In the first half of the year, Laura barely traveled for work. Suddenly, she had to be out of town every other week. Sometimes it was Dallas, sometimes Houston, sometimes she'd say it was just an overnight retreat at a resort for team building. She'd come back with new dresses, sometimes jewelry, looking a little too refreshed for someone who'd spent 2 days in workshops. She'd bring me souvenirs, hotel soaps, even a t-shirt from a local brewery, as if she'd thought of me the whole time. But when I'd ask what she did, she'd shrug. Work stuff, nothing exciting, and then she'd disappear into the shower, staying in there way longer than usual. I started noticing she'd stopped talking about her friends. Laura's always been social, always going out for coffee or brunch with her girlfriends. But lately, every night out was work-related. If I offered to drop her off or pick her up, she'd insist it wasn't necessary, that the office was way out of your way. Sometimes she'd get defensive, accusing me of being clingy, of not trusting her. I'd back off, embarrassed for even asking. Our dinners changed too. We used to cook together, sometimes try out a new recipe and laugh about how badly we'd screwed it up. But for months now, it was just takeout or something quick. She'd eat fast, always glancing at her phone, sometimes texting during dinner. If I tried to tell her about my day, she'd nod, barely listening, her mind a million miles away. It got to the point where the only time we really talked was when we argued, and even those fights felt rehearsed, like she was reading lines from a script. One night, maybe a month before the parking lot incident, I noticed a necklace around her neck, a thin gold chain with a tiny heart pendant. I'd never seen it before. It wasn't her style, either, Laura liked silver, big bold pieces, stuff she bought at art fairs. I asked her about it and she looked startled for a second. Oh, this? It's just from a coworker, a little thank you gift for helping out on the project. Everyone got one. She said it so casually, but she tucked the necklace under her blouse like she was hiding it. I let it go, but it bothered me. I didn't want to be the jealous husband, but all these small things kept adding up. Even the way she smelled when she came home was different, fancier perfume, sometimes the faintest trace of cologne that wasn't mine. She always had an explanation, but never the same one twice. The most obvious red flag was her phone. I'd see notifications pop up sometimes when she'd leave her phone on the charger, messages from Steven HR. That was her boss's first name. The messages always ended with little emojis, hearts, winks, sometimes even kisses. The first time I saw it, I joked, wow, HR is getting pretty personal these days. She ***********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************̈̈̈ That's how everyone in the office talks. You're making things up. She got mad, and for a few days after that, she barely spoke to me. I told myself to drop it. But after that night outside her office, I couldn't let it go. I started watching more closely, looking for patterns. I'd noticed she'd always make sure to shower as soon as she got home, even if it was late. She'd leave her dirty clothes at the bottom of the laundry basket, out of sight, when she used to just throw them on the chair. I found receipts in her purse, expensive restaurants we'd never been to together, bars in neighborhoods she said she hated. Once, I found a stub for a hotel valet, the kind of place you go for drinks, not business meetings. It's hard to explain the mental gymnastics you do when you don't want to believe the worst. I kept inventing explanations. Maybe she really was stressed and needed to blow off steam. Maybe work was just that demanding. I even convinced myself I was being paranoid, that all marriages go through weird patches. But the distance between us was growing by the day. Even when Laura was home, she felt absent. We stopped making plans. Our weekends filled up with errands and chores, never time together. ****X became rare, then practically non-existent. If I reached for her, she'd tense up or say she was tired. She'd stay up late on her phone, then roll over and pretend to be asleep. I tried to talk to her, to tell her I missed her. She'd shrug, say I was being dramatic. You know how it is with work. This is what I've been working toward for years. Can't you just be happy for me? Sometimes she'd accuse me of resenting her success, of trying to hold her back. That hurt. I wanted her to succeed. I just wanted to be part of her life, too. The worst part was how alone I felt. I couldn't talk to my friends about it, not really. Most of them aren't married, and the last thing I wanted was for them to think Laura was the villain or for them to start rumors. My parents would just tell me to give it time, that every couple hits a rough patch. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away and I was powerless to stop it. Sometimes, late at night, I'd lie awake and scroll back through old photos, vacations, birthdays, little moments when it was just the two of us laughing in some dumb selfie. I tried to find the exact moment things changed, but it's never that simple. It's just a slow fade, a series of tiny betrayals that only make sense when you see them all together. If you've ever been in this situation, you know how crazy it makes you feel. You start doubting your own memory, wondering if you're imagining things. I found myself apologizing to Laura for bringing up my worries, for not trusting her, for being jealous. She'd reassure me for a day or two, then go back to being distant. Each time, my hope shrank a little more. I didn't know it yet, but I was already grieving the loss of our marriage, mourning something that hadn't even ended. Not officially, anyway. All the red flags were there. I just didn't want to see them. There's a difference between suspicion and certainty, a line you pray you'll never have to cross. For weeks, maybe even months, I'd lived in that gray area, doubting myself as much as I doubted Laura. It was almost easier to believe I was paranoid than to admit what my gut already knew. But life has a way of shoving the truth in your face, whether you're ready or not. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, 3 weeks after that night in the parking lot. Work had been rough, one of those days where the hours blur together and nothing seems to go right. I came home, tossed my bag on the kitchen counter, and found Laura's laptop open on the dining table. She'd left in a hurry, running late for yet another team dinner. There was a sticky note by her keyboard, just heat up the pasta, love you, her handwriting neat, as always. I almost smiled. For a second I let myself hope things were getting better. But then my phone buzzed. The message was from a number I didn't recognize, and it only said, "You deserve to know the truth. Check your email. Don't ignore this." My stomach dropped. I opened my email, and at the top of my inbox was a message with no subject, no signature, just a single attachment, a video file labeled with nothing but the date. I almost didn't open it. I wanted to delete it, pretend I never saw it, keep clinging to my fragile hope. But curiosity, or maybe it was desperation, got the better of me. I clicked. The video started with the dim glow of an office, Laura's office. The camera was angled at the corner where her boss, Stevens, kept his little bar cart and leather couch. There she was, my wife, in that blue dress from the night I picked her up. Stevens stood beside her, holding 2 glasses of wine. The office was empty except for the 2 of them, laughter echoing off the glass walls. And then, clear as day, Laura set her glass down, moved closer, and pressed her lips to his. It wasn't a friendly peck or a drunken mistake. It was deliberate, passionate, and lasted long enough to erase any doubt about what I was seeing. Stevens's hands found her waist. Laura's arms wrapped around his neck. I watched, frozen, as they pulled away, smiling at each other the way she used to smile at me. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I replayed the video twice, hoping, insanely, that maybe I'd misinterpreted it, that there was some other explanation. There wasn't. There was no way to unsee it, no way to pretend it hadn't happened. I don't remember how long I sat there. The house was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. My mind went blank and then into overdrive, racing through every conversation, every argument, every work dinner and training trip. It all snapped into place, horribly and perfectly logical. I thought about calling her right then, but I didn't. I wanted to see her face when I confronted her, to watch her try and twist her way out. I wanted the truth, raw and ugly, not another lie. Laura came home late after 11, still in that dress. She was smiling, cheeks flushed, talking fast about how the dinner ran long, how the team had so much to celebrate, how she was exhausted and just needed a shower. I let her talk. I waited until she sat on the edge of the bed, kicking off her heels, her back to me. Then I opened the video on my phone and handed it to her. "Watch this," I said, my voice flat. She looked confused at first. But as the footage played, I watched the color drain from her face. Her hands started to shake. She didn't make it to the end before she dropped the phone onto the bed. "What is this?" she whispered. "You tell me," I replied. "Looks pretty clear to me." She started to cry, real tears, not the fake ones she used when she was trying to win an argument. "Sam, it's not what you think. I was drunk, I don't even remember," he came onto me, the excuses poured out, jumbled, desperate. "You know how those office parties get. I'd never do something like that on purpose. Please, Sam, you have to believe me." I stared at her, numb. "Don't lie to me. I saw the way you looked at him. That wasn't a mistake, Laura." She kept sobbing, clinging to me, but I was done. I stood up and walked into the hallway. I found her promotion contract, the one she'd framed and left on her desk. I brought it back, laid it in front of her, and pointed to the signature at the bottom. "Stevens, was this part of the deal too?" I asked, my voice breaking. Panic flickered in her eyes. She shook her head, but she couldn't speak. All the pieces finally made sense, the gifts, the late nights, the trips, the new dresses, the forced smiles. It was all connected to him. There was nothing left to say. The truth hung between us, sharp as broken glass. Laura collapsed into sobs, but I felt nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, just the cold realization that my marriage was already over. Maybe it had been for a long time. After the truth was out, time seemed to stretch and bend around me like I was living underwater. I could hear Laura sobbing behind me, but her voice sounded muffled, distant, as if I were listening through a wall. I just stood there in the doorway, staring at the floor, my mind racing, and then suddenly, brutally quiet. When I finally turned around, Laura was on her knees by the bed, clutching her hands together like she was praying. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her hair a mess, that blue dress bunched up at her waist. If you'd shown me this scene a year ago, I would have rushed to comfort her, to put my arms around her and tell her everything would be okay. But now all I could feel was exhaustion. A deep, bone-level weariness, as if every lie she'd told had been carved out of me, piece by piece. She tried to crawl closer, still crying. "Sam, please, just listen please, it was a mistake. I never meant for any of this to happen, I swear. You have to believe me. He was the one who started it. I was drunk, I didn't even know what I was doing." Her words bounced off me. "So, all those late nights? The training trips? The new jewelry, the secret phone calls, those were mistakes too." I could hear my own voice, cold, almost unrecognizable. Laura shook her head frantically. "No, I mean, yes, some of it was for work, but not everything. I felt trapped, Sam. You were so distant lately, always working, always tired. I just wanted to feel seen again. It got out of control. I didn't want to hurt you. I love you, I really do." It was almost funny, the way she twisted the story, turning it into something that just happened to her as if she had no choice. She tried to grab my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't touch me. Don't make this about me. You made your choices. You lied to my face for months, Laura. You looked me in the eye every day and acted like nothing was wrong. She started to shake, tears streaming down her face. Sam, please, you have to give me another chance. We can fix this, I promise. I'll do whatever it takes, therapy, quitting my job, anything. Please, just let me fix it. I'll cut him out of my life forever. I just need you to forgive me. Please. It was like watching someone drown and knowing you couldn't save them. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to remember the Laura I married, the woman who used to send me dumb memes at work and dance barefoot in the kitchen on Saturday mornings. But that version of her was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, a stranger who would rather rewrite history than admit what she'd done. I took a deep breath and forced myself to speak. No. You don't get to just hit reset because you got caught. I saw how happy you were after that promotion. You want me to believe that was just about work? You were smiling like you won the lottery, Laura. You weren't thinking about me or our marriage or what this would do to us. You were thinking about yourself. For a moment, she was silent, just gulping air between sobs. I was scared, Sam. I was scared you'd leave me if you knew how unhappy I was. I never stopped loving you. I made a mistake. I swear it didn't mean anything. I almost laughed. The script, word for word, was exactly what I'd seen 1,000 times on TV or read in Reddit threads from other people living this nightmare. The excuses, the tears, the desperate bargaining. But when it's your own life, it feels like being trapped in a play you never auditioned for. I shook my head, my voice flat. It meant enough for you to keep doing it. To keep lying, to cover your tracks. You could have told me the truth. You could have left before it got this far. But you stayed and you lied. That wasn't a mistake, Laura. That was a choice. Her face crumpled. She grabbed at my arm, pleading, don't leave me. Please, Sam. I can't do this without you. I'll do anything, just give me a chance to prove it. I gently pulled away and stood up straighter. No. I want you to pack your things and go. Tonight. She stared at me in horror as if I'd just punched her in the gut. You don't mean that, she whispered. Sam, please. We're married. We can get through this. People forgive. People move on. I love you. I looked around our bedroom at the framed wedding photos, the messy dresser, the quilt Laura's mom made us when we got engaged. It all felt like props in a story that was never real. I mean it, I said, more tired than angry. You need to leave. I need space. I can't do this with you here, pretending we can just patch this up. I'm done pretending. For a moment, she didn't move, as if she couldn't quite process what was happening. Then, slowly, she stood up, wobbling in her heels. She looked around, dazed, as if trying to find proof this was just a nightmare. She packed in silence, except for the occasional hiccuping sob. I sat in the living room, staring at nothing, listening to drawers open and close. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just waited for the illusion to collapse completely. Before she left, Laura paused in the hallway, clutching a duffel bag, makeup smeared, eyes red. Sam, if you ever want to talk, if you ever want to try again, I'll be here. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. I hope you can forgive me someday. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I watched as she walked out the door and closed it quietly behind her. And just like that, 7 years of marriage unraveled in a single night. Not with a bang, but with the soft, final click of the front door shutting. I sat in the silence, feeling a strange emptiness settle over me, heavier and colder than anything I'd ever known. For the first time, I realized, sometimes, the end doesn't feel like heartbreak. It just feels like relief. When Laura left the house that night, the silence she left behind felt heavier than anything she'd said. For the first time in years, I was truly alone in our home, and the quiet was deafening. I sat in the same spot on the living room couch for what felt like hours, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the hallway clock, the distant whoosh of a passing car. Sounds I'd never noticed before, sounds that now seemed to fill every corner. It's a strange thing, the emptiness someone leaves behind. At first, I thought I'd feel rage or maybe some kind of twisted freedom. Instead, it was numbness, like my mind was running through a checklist of things I ought to be feeling: anger, grief, betrayal, without actually landing on any one of them. I looked around the room and saw traces of her everywhere. Laura's favorite mug, a book she never finished, her sweater draped over the back of a chair. Each one felt both precious and unbearable. I couldn't bring myself to move anything, It was like touching them would make the loss real. I didn't sleep that night. I wandered from room to room, picking up things, setting them back down. I stood in our bedroom doorway, staring at the indentation on her side of the bed. The pillow still held the faintest impression of her head, the sheets a little bunched where she'd always curled up with her back to me. For a moment, I almost called out her name, half expecting her to answer from the bathroom or the hallway. But the house stayed silent. At some point, I realized I was just moving in circles, like a ghost haunting my own life. I sat at the kitchen table, turning my wedding ring over and over in my palm, feeling the cool metal against my skin. I tried to remember the last time Laura and I had really laughed together, or when we'd made plans for the future that actually felt possible. It was all so distant now, like it belonged to someone else's story. The next morning, I woke up, if you could call it sleep at all, to sunlight filtering through the blinds. For a moment, I forgot everything that had happened. I reached over for Laura, out of pure habit, my hand landing on empty sheets. The reality hit me again, sharp and fresh, like reopening a wound that hadn't even started to heal. I got up and made coffee, moving on autopilot. Every step felt strange, like I was living in a museum of our life together. Laura's shoes by the door, the half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower, her handwriting on a sticky note about groceries. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the bathroom, a smell I used to love, but now made my stomach twist. I realized, standing there with my coffee, that everything she'd left behind felt foreign. Her things weren't comforting. They were reminders of a reality that had shattered. People always talk about grief as if it's loud. Tears, shouting, slamming doors. But for me, it was the quiet that hurt the most. I missed even our arguments, the tension in her voice, the frustration I used to feel when she brushed me off or hid behind her phone. At least then, she was still there. Now there was only space, an endless stretch of empty rooms. I started to wonder if I should pack up her things right away, but every time I tried, I stopped myself. It felt final, like closing a book before reading the last chapter. I wasn't ready. Instead, I left everything where it was, as if maybe she'd walk back in and apologize, say it was all a nightmare, and we'd somehow go back to how things used to be. But I knew, deep down, that wasn't possible. That version of us was gone for good. I tried to distract myself. I went for a walk in the neighborhood, passing houses I'd never really noticed, nodding at neighbors I barely knew. Everything felt off-kilter. Even the sky looked different, gray and too bright at the same time. I found myself avoiding places that held memories, the bakery where we'd bought bread on Sunday mornings, the park where Laura used to read on the grass. It was like the city itself had turned into a minefield of reminders. When I got home, I stood in the hallway staring at a framed photo from our wedding. Laura in her dress, me in a suit that didn't quite fit, both of us laughing, eyes crinkled with happiness. I tried to remember what that happiness felt like. I wondered how two people who once looked so sure of each other could end up as strangers, separated by 100 unspoken resentments. Days blurred together. I moved through routines, barely eating, barely sleeping. Friends and family texted, thinking of you, let me know if you want to talk, but I didn't answer. I couldn't explain what I was feeling, and I didn't want to hear anyone tell me it would get better. Not yet. I needed to sit in the emptiness a while, let it hollow me out, see what was left. Some nights, I'd lie in bed and let my mind wander back through our whole marriage, replaying scenes in my head. The first time we met at that music festival. The road trip to Big Bend. The arguments, the makeups, the nights spent dreaming of the future. I realized, with a dull kind of pain, that I'd already started forgetting the details, what her laugh sounded like when she was really happy, the exact color of her eyes in the morning sun. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. One morning, maybe a week after Laura left, I woke up and realized the apartment felt different. The air was lighter, somehow. Her things still sat where she'd left them, but they no longer felt like pieces of a puzzle I was trying to solve. They were just things, objects, nothing more. I stood by the open window, feeling the breeze against my face, and for the first time, I understood, forgetting her wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way to move forward. I couldn't keep living in the ruins of an illusion, clinging to a love that only existed in my memory. That's when I decided to start letting go. One step at a time.